Hello, everyone. Hope you're having a nice weekend. I'm Dan Kennedy from the 11Alive Streaming Center. It's been a busy week across Georgia, so let's get you caught up with 11Alive news this week. A woman is dead and two men injured in a triple shooting outside of the Little Bear Food Mart. It's a spot in DeKalb County and sadly no stranger to violent crime. Grace King has the latest from investigators.
Well, Atlanta police believe a fight started outside of Little Bear Mart around 12:15 this afternoon and quickly turned violent. Now, we spoke with Lieutenant Christopher Butler a short while ago, who told us APD got a call around 12:18 in reference to a shooting. Their investigation so far suggests two groups got into an argument and began firing gunshots that struck several innocent people in the area. APD believes they were unhoused and living here. One of them, a 43-year-old woman, unfortunately passed away on scene. Two others were taken to Grady Hospital.
As far as the information we can release, it appears that this was an escalating dispute between known parties stemming from some kind of disrespect that happened out here. So we're still working on that. It's a little ambiguous right now, but we're still trying to narrow down those details and locate some persons of interest.
And at this point, APD says they believe this was an isolated incident and that there is no further danger to the community. In Southeast Atlanta, Grace King, 11Alive News.
Also in DeKalb County, police investigating a deadly crash involving a U.S. Postal Service truck in Decatur. 11Alive's Ariana Manise has more on what neighbors are saying happened.
The medical examiner's office is confirming the identity of the victim involved in this deadly crash. They're named Tanisha Cade, 40 years old. We spoke to neighbors and they tell us the impact of this crash was so loud. Everyone in this area immediately rushed out to help. This is video from the scene last night of the USPS carrier truck involved in this deadly crash being towed away. You see the heavy damage to the front end and the driver's side door caved in. Another vehicle, a gray Acura with front end damage, was also towed away from the area. The medical examiner's office was here last night, and we spoke to one neighbor who says the mail truck flipped on its side after the impact, and she says she immediately ran outside trying to help.
I saw the driver of I think it was an Acura, a gray Acura. He was standing in the middle of the street and he was screaming, and he was saying she was under the truck. So I was like, did you call 911? I was running back in the house to find my phone because it just happened so fast and it happened quickly.
Now, neighbors tell us they're heartbroken. They say they often would see that mail carrier and described her as a sweet person. As of right now, police have not provided any further information about what led up to this crash and where they stand in this investigation. Once we get that update, we'll be sure to bring you the latest. Reporting from Decatur, I'm Ariana Manise for 11Alive.
Also in DeKalb County, a suspect accused of intentionally setting 15 separate fires now under arrest and facing third-degree arson charges. 11Alive's Marissa Sarback reports on how investigators were able to track him down.
Officials say they don't know why any of these fires were started, but with 15 fires in just a half-mile radius, they say surprisingly there was no significant damage to any building or any person.
What occurred on Sunday and Monday was the setting of intentional fires, which is illegal and dangerous.
Wasim Majid is now behind bars, accused of intentionally setting 15 fires near the campuses of Georgia State, Perimeter College, and Georgia Piedmont Technical College over the course of a few hours Sunday night into Monday morning.
Our fire investigators, what they did was work, and they just kind of looked at the patterns that the fires were coming out in, and so that's where they start to begin their canvas, obviously trying to get ahead of what the patterns were showing. We did have some video footage that we were able to capture to get an image of the suspect, and then our fire investigators located him, identified him, located him, contacted DeKalb County PD, and that's when he was taken into custody.
DeKalb County officials announcing today he was arrested with fire-starting items on him. And while they were able to get him into custody relatively quickly, the dry weather conditions made it difficult to get under control.
The work of extinguishing the fires was made more challenging by the drought and by working in the middle of the night.
The fire department says thankfully no one was injured.
These fires could have threatened occupied buildings and endangered lives. Furthermore, the staffing and resources needed to extinguish these fires were diverted from other calls.
Police and fire officials say they believe Majid acted alone, but this is still an open and active investigation. Marissa Sarback for 11Alive News.
A former inmate at the Fulton County Jail continues to call for change. Rashad Muhammad says he was denied medical treatment in jail, and it led to him having to have amputations. 11Alive's Gilad Malamed has his story.
Stand up for Rashad.
Rashad Muhammad joined by his attorneys, including civil rights attorney Ben Crump, after a meeting with Fulton County Sheriff Pat Labat.
I can't believe what happened to me here.
Muhammad says he was denied medical care during the 11 days he was in Fulton County Jail before he was ultimately taken to Grady Hospital. There, doctors amputated his legs and several fingers due to complications from septic shock. Muhammad says despite repeated requests while in jail, he was not given antibiotics that he needed every day.
I suffered in this place.
Yes.
I asked him for something simple like my medicine.
Civil rights attorney Ben Crump
We're all standing up today for Rashad.
says Muhammad's case is just one example of the need for a new jail and new jail medical provider, noting he stood here in 2023 following the in-custody death of LaShawn Thompson, who was found covered in bedbugs and lice, and saying it's been 2 years since a 2024 DOJ report called the jail's conditions dangerous.
It was foreseeable that there was going to be a tragedy like Rashad Muhammad.
That's right. That's right.
It is foreseeable that if nothing happens, that this won't be the last tragedy.
Fulton County Commissioner Marvin Arrington
We've got to do better.
says the decision to renew the jail's medical provider's contract was unanimous. I asked him why it was renewed.
And I think that is because there were no other medical providers available that were willing to come in, and that the ones that were willing to come in were charging 2 or 3 times as much or a considerable amount more.
Muhammad hopes changes come so no one leaves Fulton County Jail permanently impacted the way he is.
It hurts daily, and I need help. I need a lot of help for the rest of my life.
Brookhaven police are taking response times to the next level. We're talking about their new fleet of drones often arriving to a scene before an officer. 11Alive's Cody Alcorn highlights how the department is utilizing that drone program and how they did so in a recent arrest.
Brookhaven police released this drone footage from a recent 911 call.
A neighbor that had called and it said that there was some squatting incidents going on.
The drone
usually getting there prior to an officer ever arriving on scene.
Getting eyes on the home in seconds.
We noticed that the home was, obviously had been burnt out and wasn't livable. It wasn't in any kind of condition for someone to be inside of.
Sergeant Samuel Jones oversees the agency's drone program.
If somebody's inside of a home, let's say for squatting, they're not anticipating somebody else coming inside that home. So there's always the risk of what could that person do.
The drone adding a layer of safety, flying inside the home, allowing officers to put eyes on the situation from a distance.
You don't want to put an officer into a situation that you can otherwise avoid. If you can use something like this, like a drone, to put it inside and identify who the person is, if they're armed, what are they doing, are they asleep?
In this case, you can see the drone found the suspect who tossed a jacket on it. Officers made contact and the suspect was arrested, and no officers were hurt. Just one of 1,300 flights this year, on average arriving to a scene within a minute.
Somebody calls 911 and in 57 seconds you have a drone sitting above them relaying information back to the officer through their radios, but also live streaming the video that they have onto their portable laptops.
More news after this. You're watching 11Alive News this week on 11Alive Plus. A Stone Mountain family says they are overwhelmed with debt. A shooting left one of them in the hospital for more than a month while the other was about to give birth. 11Alive's Chase Howell reports about how their medical bills have climbed to more than $1 million, and that's even with insurance.
Ladarius Thomas says a quick trip to this Chevron gas station off of Rockbridge and Stevenson Road changed his life forever when he says a group of teenagers shot him multiple times during an attempted robbery.
It's the worst feeling in the world. I've never been put out of commission. I've always been up grinding, make sure I can take care of my people.
Pictured here is Ladarius, laid out in the middle of a gas station parking lot after being shot 8 times.
I was shot in my arm here and here. I was shot in my abdomen multiple times. I had to have surgery on my intestines, and they had to do 3 surgeries on my abdomen. And I was shot in my back twice.
Thomas says the attempted armed robbery nearly cost him his life and his ability to walk after one of the bullets hit his spine. And because of his injuries, he hasn't been able to work for the last 5 months.
We've been struggling to make sure that we can at least just keep us a roof over our head, keep us a car in the driveway.
Ladarius and his wife Ladoria just welcomed baby number 4 in February. And while she's on maternity leave, her checks alone are hardly putting a dent in their bills.
Every dollar that I have is tied to bills, just to keep the lights on, just to get food on the table. We don't even get government assistance because they claim that we make too much when we don't even work right now. I'm getting 60% of my check.
Then on top of that, they're looking at a $1.5 million medical bill from Grady.
I don't even understand how they think we're supposed to pay that. We don't even make that we couldn't even make that in 10 years. So how are we supposed to pay $1.5 million for saving someone's life?
In the meantime, the Thomases say they're going to continue to lean on one another and on their faith. In Stone Mountain, Chase Howell, 11Alive News.
Gwinnett County families getting another chance to hear from the school district's next leader. The incoming superintendent held a second town hall before her official start date coming up on July 1st. 11Alive's Angelina Salcido shares more about how the new leader is planning for Georgia's largest school district.
How do you think students can actually contribute their ideas?
Question: beyond pay, what specific cultural shifts do you plan to implement?
After question, incoming Superintendent Dr. Alexandra Estrella is working to build relationships with Gwinnett County families and district staff.
And to me, it's really important that we design programs that meet the needs of students. If that's not happening, then there's change that needs to occur within the organization.
The District 5 crowd responding to Estrella's vision as she delivers her message in both English and Spanish.
One of the things that to me it's going to be really important is to differentiate what I do for every cluster.
Focus on each community, including Gwinnett's large Latino population.
A high number speak Spanish, so I was really hoping that it would be somebody that could really relate with all cultures.
For some, the connection was instant.
The parent was just elated that she was able to speak to them in their own language.
In the crowd, some families use headphones for translation, like Niglisbeth Fernandez. She says this moment feels special, seeing the first Latina leading the district. Her children are multilingual learners after moving from Venezuela 4 years ago. She says they face challenges, including bullying. She hopes Estrella's leadership helps motivate all students to show up and feel supported. Absenteeism, along with graduation rates and literacy, all priorities for Estrella. Town halls just the start of her 100-day plan. Focus first on listening.
That work will then inform our new strategic plan that will help set the way for the next 5 years.
Angelina Salcido, 11Alive News.
Governor Brian Kemp now calling for new electoral maps in Georgia before the 2028 electoral cycle. This comes after a big Supreme Court decision this week that has significant implications for the Voting Rights Act. 11Alive's Doug Richards looks at how the viewpoints on that decision vary by political party.
Georgia Democrats woke up in the political equivalent of a cold sweat following Wednesday's Supreme Court ruling.
He has basically blessed partisan gerrymandering, which is just awful.
Former state senator Jen Jordan said what many Democrats were saying. Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito had written a ruling that overturns much of the U.S. Voting Rights Act.
They don't even have to protect minority voting rights anymore.
Jordan is running for a seat on the state Supreme Court. Former Republican state Senate leader John Kennedy praised the court's ruling, calling it a victory for common sense and a long overdue win for every southern state forced to bend the knee to federal courts on redistricting. He's running for lieutenant governor.
Well, they're certainly all clamoring to have a special session, and they're saying it out loud. They're saying, redraw these districts.
Former lieutenant governor and former Republican Jeff Duncan says his former party has been upfront about wanting to draw districts that favor the GOP, and this ruling empowers them to do it even more than they already have.
At an overall political level, we're a swing state. But when you look down at the district level, the maps have been rigged so that they pretty much eliminated competition. Could they do more? I'm sure it's possible to do more.
Though some Republicans might want to change their election maps for this year's election, 2028 is a much more likely scenario. At the Capitol, Doug Richards, 11Alive News.
New questions about the accuracy of voter rolls in Fulton County. An 11Alive investigation found illegal entries like commercial addresses and P.O. boxes, raising concerns about how voter data is maintained. County leaders say the issues are being caught and corrected. Savannah Levins reports.
This is a beautiful Atlanta skyline.
And this is where one person is currently registered to vote.
I just want to find 11,780 votes.
We know those voter rolls are not clean.
This is a place where people are registered to vote.
It shouldn't be that hard.
In Georgia's most populous county, Fulton, there are nearly 800,000 people actively registered to vote, and 16 people in charge of making sure the county's voter roll is clean.
It is not something that we hit and miss. It is not something once a month. It is daily. In January, we had 53,000 voters that we had to look at to determine whether or not they were should be challenged. The department issues its own challenges.
Fulton Election Board Chair Sherry Allen knows it's an uphill battle in a county this large.
Now we're down to 14,899, but more come in every day.
Thousands of anomalies, people illegally registered at non-residential addresses, like P.O. boxes or businesses, moves out of state, invalid birthdays, name and address typos, deceased voters, people registered twice.
But it comes down to validating the data. You register to vote, and it's whatever they type in. But when you're talking tens of thousands across the state, that's enough to swing an election.
Jason Frazier was one of the first citizens to publicly challenge voter registrations in Georgia after the passage of a state law in 2021 that gave the public a legal path to do so. It was a hotly debated decision in the wake of a contentious presidential election. Starting in 2021, Frazier submitted thousands of voter roll challenges, primarily in Fulton County.
I found 10,000 people in Fulton County that were registered more than one time, and that enables double voting.
Since the 2020 election in Georgia, there have been dozens of accusations of double voting, a felony, by both citizen challenges and the Secretary of State's office. At least 7 have faced criminal charges. 11Alive Investigates obtained a copy of Fulton's voter roll and independently found several anomalies, including dozens of registrations at P.O. boxes or apparent commercial addresses, and otherwise invalid data like birth years of 1900.
And how does something like that happen?
You shouldn't see that anywhere anymore. Some inadvertent, some of it is education and knowing what the law requires.
Do you think that these things could be resolved in, 24 hours?
Oh, yes.
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 But Frazier says many of the registrations he challenged years ago remain on the roll today.
They accepted the challenge, admitted that those were illegal addresses, and left them on the voter rolls. So, and several of them continued to vote at UPS stores.
We cross-referenced the voter roll with the UPS store nearest to 11Alive's Midtown studio. And sure enough,
there are 27 people registered to vote right here at this UPS store today.
Anyone whose registration is challenged by either the county or member of the public will receive a letter prompting them to correct it online, over the phone, or in person within 30 days.
I don't want to cause a difficulty on anybody, but I want them to vote in the right district and only one time in America.
Savannah Levins, 11Alive News Investigates.
We'll have more after this. You're watching 11Alive News this week on 11Alive Plus. You know, with the cost of living going up and concerns about AI, many graduates are wondering what to do next. 11Alive's Rebecca Lindstrom posted this video breaking down the best entry-level jobs.
People always ask, how did I choose reporting as a career? And as a mom of a college-age kid who is also trying to figure out what he wants to do professionally, I wonder, how do we pick our occupations? Well, if you just want to pick an entry-level job with security and good pay, Wallet Hub says the careers to pick right now are related to engineering, like hardware, software, and electrical engineering. Nursing assistants are also on its list for best entry-level jobs based on starting salary, protected job growth, and tenure with an employer. Worst entry-level jobs, emergency dispatcher, boilermaker, whatever that is, and benefits administrator.
A new exhibit in Atlanta is revisiting portraits that challenged how the world viewed Black American life in the early 1900s. 11Alive's race, culture, and religion reporter Danielle Nottingham has more.
At the 1900 World's Fair in Paris, W.E.B. Du Bois curated hundreds of photographs of Black Americans who were professional and formally dressed.
Du Bois was very, very particular in the ways in which he told his story and the ways in which he presented black people and black life.
When racist images dominated the perception of African Americans, Du Bois and his Atlanta University students used portraits, maps, and color charts to visually communicate the economic and social progress of black Americans after emancipation and despite racism.
But he also understood the power of art and the power of art to tell stories beyond numbers and language.
Today, that mission continues at the African Diaspora Art Museum, pairing Du Bois's work with these modern images of black Atlantans who are also thriving. This is Du Bois alongside Clark Atlanta University President George French.
Dr. French is a student of Du Bois. He studies Du Bois and has based a lot of his own educational philosophy on the work that Du Bois has done.
The exhibit showcases Atlanta water boys.
This is on Auburn Avenue.
Business owners and highly educated black women.
This is important because it also continues to this day to dispel a lot of the stereotypes and myths that exist around black life and black culture.
More than a century later, Du Bois's message endures. Telling your own story is a powerful act of resistance. Danielle Nottingham, 11Alive News.
You know, for many police officers, the toughest battles don't end when the shift does. One Georgia-based group is helping officers and their families heal, connect, and find peace, one fishing trip at a time. 11Alive's Caitlin Ross shows us how they're hooked on the blue.
That's bluegill, that's bass.
Out here, it's quiet enough to finally say the things that are hard to carry.
You've been in the force how long? 14 years?
Because from the outside, everything can look just fine.
First couple of nights back on shift, it was...
But beneath the surface,
nerve-wracking.
A lot of officers are holding on to moments that don't just wash away.
Some of the things that we see in our line of work, no one else has ever experienced.
And out here, the water has a way of meeting them right there.
The spiritual healing was much needed.
Milton Officer David Little is ready to share now.
I got shot a couple times, one in the stomach, and I took some shrapnel in my right hip and left thigh, and then I took a chunk of bullet between my index finger and middle knuckle right here.
Wounds you can see and those you can't.
I think any time that you can open up about something, it's always good.
I tell people all the time, I was like, you need to go talk to somebody, you need to go talk to somebody.
For Police Officer Matthew Underwood, this became a calling.
No alcohol, no drugs or anything to cope with things, but let me go fishing.
Founding Hooked on the Blue to make sure no one has to heal alone.
Cry a little bit, love on each other a little bit, and just to get to know them real well and let them know that they have another extended family.
Trips that aren't just about fishing, but about giving officers and their families a chance to breathe again.
When officers get seriously injured in the line of duty, they kind of get forgotten about, out of sight, out of mind. And with us, we want to let them know that we do have their back and that we're here for them, that we love them.
And for the officers and families who step onto these boats, that stillness can mean everything.
I genuinely appreciate everything that you guys did for us. That one trip did so much for me.
Out here, it's not about forgetting what happened. It's about finding a little peace in the middle of it.
Doctors are sounding the alarm about a troubling trend, the increase in colorectal cancer cases among younger adults. 11Alive's Joe Ripley shares how early detection helped save one father's life.
Adam Keating lives for his family, seeing historic sights and hitting the high seas with his wife Lauren and their 2 kids.
Family is literally the linchpin and pinnacle of my life, the cornerstone of my life, along with my faith.
His family and faith kept this 41-year-old going, even when something inside felt wrong.
This is the last thing I thought I'd be having to worry about the first quarter of this year. I'm active, I'm healthy, and it kind of took me by surprise. You know, I had symptoms, I'd say the last 6 to 9 months, some changes in bowel habits.
After seeing a gastroenterologist, Keating got a colonoscopy.
They found a egg-sized tumor in my colon, and it was removed about 2 weeks later.
Surgeons had to remove the tumor and 10 inches of his colon, which would not have happened had Keating not gotten a screening.
30 years ago, about 11% of all patients with that disease were under the age of 54. Now it's up to 20%.
Dr. Wally Curran, chief of oncology at Piedmont Healthcare, says 150,000 people are diagnosed with colorectal cancer in the U.S. each year. Despite advances in care, about a third of those patients die from the disease.
Any blood in the stool should alert a call to your physician. Change in difficulty in evacuating, change in the appearance of your stool.
Keating has to undergo yearly colonoscopies now, but that pales in comparison to getting to spend the rest of his life with the ones he loves.
It narrows your focus 100%.
From carpool to content creator, one Atlanta mom now turning her nursing skills into something that kids and parents can both learn from. 11Alive's Aisha Howard introduces us to the woman behind Nurse Dolly and how she's building a mini med school one video at a time.
Hi, doctors and nurses in training. I'm Nurse Dolly.
Emergency medicine nurse for 12-hour shifts, a mom 24/7. Now Nurse Dolly to her young viewers. Imari Etatawo is an idea in action.
I was trying to figure out, Imari, what are you going to do to make a difference in nursing beyond the bedside? And the idea came to me. Being a mom to a toddler and a preschooler, I noticed that there was a gap in health education.
So she decided to fill that void by posting health education content for children on YouTube.
Let me just go ahead and start trademarking, the name and the idea.
And just like that, Nurse Dolly was born, a name rooted in family and a little childhood nostalgia.
So my parents are from a West Indian island called Montserrat in the Caribbean, and in the Caribbean we call a Barbie doll a dolly. And all my life my mom dressed me up like her little Barbie doll, and people always used to call me Dolly.
Today, her YouTube channel is helping kids learn about their bodies without it feeling like a lesson. Since June of 2025, Nurse Dolly has grown her channel to more than 23,000 subscribers with more than 330,000 views.
The journey has been absolutely amazing, exciting. I've been getting such great feedback from parents, telling me that their kids are doing better with doctor visits.
Now let's be real, being a mom, a nurse, and a content creator, that's a full schedule and then some.
I work 3 days a week as a nurse, so my other days I try to be, productive and record and, edit and create music. So I feel like it's been overwhelming, but I've been getting it done.
But if you ask her, the secret is not perfection. It's just about getting started.
Yeah, I would just tell them to just step out on faith, and if you believe in yourself and believe in your idea, that sometimes you just don't have to think about it, just execute, get in that mode.
Hey, thanks for watching 11 Alive News this week. I'm Dan Kennedy. More news on the way next.